Hey, good day everybody, and welcome back to the Air Warfare Group. This is Juice, and today's video is a twofold video. First, it is to announce that we are continuing our Combat Search and Rescue series for kind of tying in the real-world application for training, and then also seeing how we can emulate and apply that to programs like DCS World. Today's episode is going to be about authentication. It's a factor that is considered in combat search and rescue to make sure that the actual person we're going out to rescue is who they say they are or who we think they are, and it's also a way for the rescuee or the isolated person to authenticate who's coming to get them, so that to make sure that it's not a trap or anything. So we'll go into that a little bit more detail in a minute. So in this video I'm going to talk a little bit about background, and when I do this I want first to say if you guys are not here to see anything about real-world combat search and rescue history, my background and connection with that, or how to apply that at DCS World, then this is not a video for you. It's just a video showing how you can take some of the experience I had when I was in the U.S. Air Force, using open source free documents you can find on the internet, and apply it to your training with a little bit of help and practice. So if this is the video for you, then sit back and enjoy. We'll talk about, after we talk about my background and how it relates to this, we'll talk about the history of combat search and rescue or personnel recovery. We'll talk about different terminology as related to the purpose of what, or the title of what this is called. We'll also talk about how you can put it into sim training. We'll go over the ISAPREP form, and I'll give you some examples of the information that we're going to use in the training. So my background, most of you know that I started out my first 3 years, I was a basic life support guy. Went to tech school in Illinois, and then prior to going to Okinawa to my first assignment, I had to go to basic combat survival course at Fairchild in Washington State, and then also I had to go to the parachuting or ejection seat water survival course down in Florida. My job in Okinawa was to assist the survival trainers that were certified to train, and I was just an extra guy, an extra hand. It was twofold too. It also allowed me to assist, but also allowed me to pick up on some of the skills and some of the teaching and lesson planning and stuff like that that I would eventually end up doing later in my career. I then went at 3 years to the Air Force Survival School on staff there, where I was one of 4 life support guys ever in history to be assigned to that position over about a period of about 20-25 years. I was there 5.5 years, and my job was to teach the instructors all of the technical side of survival training and survival in the environment. Everything from life rafts, parachutes, survival kits, radios, signal flares, everything that's done that you see in the movies where they're popping smoke or they're shooting something up in the air. Learning how to navigate, learn how to vector in helicopters, stuff like that. And so in turn they taught me how to do escape and evasion, how to do lesson planning, how to develop curriculum, and it was a win-win situation for all, and it's kind of branded me for life of how I got into the survival and rescue operations. Prior to my retirement, I went to multiple different other locations in Strategic Air Command at Fairchild across the base from the survival school, worked on bombers and tankers, and because of my survival background I ended up going back into the survival shop, going back into the training shop. After I left there, I went to Korea. Didn't really do much in Korea except I was running an F-16 life support shop. Got back to Fairchild, got back into the survival world, back into the aircrew training world. And eventually I got stationed in a group, the 85th Operations Group in Iceland, where we just happened to have a full-up rescue squadron, the 56 Green Feet, and they found out about my background at the SEER school and in life support and doing these exercises, Cope Thunders, Team Spirit, stuff like that, Red Flag. And they asked me if I wanted to help run CSAR missions there, or CSAR training missions there. So it worked out pretty good. We got to train the air crew, all the new lieutenants and new PJs and gunners that were coming up in the Air Force. We got to train them how to go out and pick somebody up, or go out and rescue, authenticate somebody. So a lot of times I got to play the survivor. More often than not, I got to play the survivor escort, where I actually was the safety observer escorting a pilot teaching him the ropes on the ground while I was also making sure that everything was safe with the helicopter coming in and all the different things that can go wrong during a CSAR exercise. Sometimes rarely I got to play a Special Forces link-up person where I got to dress up like I was in combat gear and go out and actually authenticate myself and call in the bird for the pickup and get on the bird with him and go home. So it was fun times. So back in the history of CSAR, Combat Search and Rescue, the first CSAR was in 1915 during World War I, and this guy, Richard Bell Davies, he was a part of a British Royal Navy unit that landed his airplane and used his single-seat aeroplane to pick up his wingman who had been shot down in Bulgaria. And this is considered the first combat search and rescue, and at least using an airplane. And you know, kind of led to the birth of what we have now with using aircraft as a means to extract personnel. The current model that we use now, or what has evolved over the last 30 to 50 years, has come from Southeast Asia, and it's basically what happened is PR has evolved over the times from our experiences in Vietnam, where we actually started doing coordinated, dedicated rescue forces using Sandys as A-1 Sky Raiders, as Sandys to sanitize and escort, OV-10s to mark targets, OA-37s, but we also used the HH-3, the Jolly Green helicopter, to go in with guns blazing, PJs on board to drop down to treat the wounded and get them aboard while they're fighting their way out. And so we realized that, especially with the way our prisoners were treated in Vietnam and used as propaganda on television, we realized the values that we had of getting those people back right away. And so we really beefed up our combat rescue capabilities starting at that time. The terminology that I want to cover real quick is the three common names that you'll hear this called. First thing you'll hear is CSAR. Stands for Combat Search and Rescue. If you have a SAR, it's just a search and rescue. There's no combat involved. If you have a combat rescue, it means the same thing. As a matter of fact, there was a period where combat rescue was interchangeable with both CSAR and personnel recovery. Now, the whole program that we run now in the military, in NATO, and in the Department of Defense is the personnel recovery program, and it's really been formalized. It's integrated so much stuff, and you can Google that. Just go and say, what is personnel recovery? You can find a Wikipedia page. You can find the document that tells about it. It's open, all open source. You can download it if you want to read the PDF. It's pretty good sleepy reading if you're having a hard time sleeping at night. So sometimes I'll pick it up on my iPad and read on it right before bed. So sim training is exactly what it is you're using a simulated platform to emulate some of the elements, whether it be in helicopters or on the ground, in aircraft supporting, using radios and communications and signaling devices. We're going to pick that up and do that. Now, right now, the current H60 mod that is community module aircraft that is available right now is not ready for it, but it's coming along. We're going to use it as soon as it's ready. Right now it has no air crew, it has no guns, has no door stations, and it's not modeled. We want to get them to model the HH60 Golf variant of the Lima. Basically, we want to at least get the external model and the crew to look like they're a rescue, and we want to have that seat moved out from in the cargo area, and we also want to have the auxiliary fuel tanks bolted on or strapped on with the cargo straps against the back wall. So as soon as that comes, we'll get back into some actual flying, but until then we're going to cover little elements like this. So in sim training, I have done CSAR training in ARMA 2 and ARMA 3 with milsim groups that wanted to play serious and wanted to try it out, and unfortunately I was surrounded by other people like me that had experience in doing this. Other aircrew members that had gone through the CSAR and SEER training to know how to do the communications and know how to do all of the different elements like escape and evasion, move to a safe area, contact rescue forces, code words, stuff like that. And then the other thing we'll do is we'll basically tie this into DCS World. That's why we're here today. So before you go, or before you continue watching this, go ahead and pause this and Google what is an isoprep form. Okay, now that you're back from looking at the ISOPrep form, you can see you can find a lot of information, including downloading the form. And we're going to go into that form. So the first page that you get when you download the PDF is going to be the instructions. It's pretty self-explanatory. You can go down and look at that. If you guys have any questions about anything on there, and if it doesn't explain it and I can talk about it, you can put a comment about it. But if it's something, you know, specific to a mission or a person or an event, I have no information about it. I wasn't there. I can't say anything about it. Can't even speculate. So the second page that you'll look at is just self-explanatory also. It's where the person's information goes in. All the, you know, they ask for blood type, current unit, eye color, a lot of stuff. If they're issued a blood chip, I have a section on that. If you go back and search Air Warfare Group blood chip, you'll see the episode on that. You'll see what blood chits are all about. That is in here. Any identifying marks, and remember, this is personnel recovery. It's you know, we don't know if the person's going to be alive or dead when we go to recover them, but we need to be able to authenticate them and identify them so that we know that we're, you know, repatriating the right person. So we go in and you see all the information. They've got all this kind of the stuff that we're going to focus on today. At the end of this video, or what the beef of this video is the area down in section 9, which is the authentication section. And this is the personal authentication information. Now the form up the top says confidential when blocks 50 through 54 are filled in. Well, yes, that is true. If it's assigned to an individual and those valid statements are applicable to that, this form becomes confidential. But the fact this form is existing and you can look at it is not confidential. It's not classified. As a matter of fact, we'll use some authentication statements, or one authentication statement and one number that I've created just for me to show you an example how you could use this on the radios, on SRS and DCS. And you'll see that we're going to go through and do a whole CSAR series where we're going to actually videotape it. You'll hear the comms, you'll hear everybody on radios. You won't even hear my voice in my normal natural setting like you're hearing it now. You'll hear me coming across on the radio like I'm actually talking on the radio. So an example of an authentication statement is basically it's a long run out statement that makes sense, that the person that is isolated has come up with, that allows for up to, or not excluding, but at least 5 verification points of information in that. Now I'll give you what I came up with. This is one that I would use if I was a downed or isolated person that had to fill out this form. My first car was a 1974 green Chevy Vega with a glass pack that I totaled in high school. So I would write that. That's a true statement. I had a 1974 green Chevy Vega. You know, it's at least it wasn't a Chevette, and it had a glass pack because it was a 4-cylinder engine. It had one header on it, so I basically just had a glass pack coming out on the driver's side. And boy, when I downshifted, it would go wah 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 wah. And being in high school and being as reckless as I was growing up, I totaled it within a year, probably a year and a half, pulled out, and it got hit. I actually drove it for almost a year with no glass in the window, and basically it had a hip on one side where I pulled out in front of somebody and got T-boned. But I still drove it until the fuel pump died, and then we just junked it, and I got a Toyota pickup, which I later totaled in high school. So more about that later. Don't ask any questions. So from this statement, I could be asked on the radio, or if I'm handcuffed or head blindfolded and, you know, and held to the ground while they're making sure, they could say, you know, Major Welch, what was the color of your first car? And I could say green. Or they could say, what was the make of your first car? I could say Chevy or Chevrolet. What was the model of your first car? Vega. What type of exhaust system did you have on your first car? Glass pack. What happened to your first car? I totaled it. When did you total your first car? In high school. There's a lot of information that can be drawn from that. And then what you want to do is you want to come up with statements that can be used. You can use one element but doesn't compromise the rest of the statement. You wouldn't have somebody read their whole statement to you. And as a matter of fact, if anybody asked you, can you read your identification or your authentication statement for us? And that's not the protocol. You wouldn't do that. They would have to ask you a question. Now, if they asked me, what was the color of your first car? And I said green, they say, Roger, that we confirmed. Well, anybody that's trying to capture me would say that. So you could ask, hey, reverse authentication, rescue forces, what happened to my first car in high school? You know, or you can say, what make was my first car? And if they don't come back with Chevy or totaled in high school, then you know those people aren't the people you're supposed to get in the car with or get in the helicopter with. So that's just an example. You'll see us use it on the radios, and it's a drawn out process. It's not going to happen pretty fast. As a matter of fact, I'm going to put a link to a Danger TV episode on helicopter wars from Nat Geo, from National Geographic Channel, on the Taliban Gambit. It's the rescue of Marcus Latoro, if I'm saying that correctly. He's the lone survivor SEAL, part of the 4-man SEAL team that was ambushed in Afghanistan. The one where Operation Red Wings went in to rescue him, and that's when we lost the Chinook, the biggest loss of life in one day in a rescue attempt. In a Chinook got shot down with an RPG. I'll put a link to that in this description. You can watch that. It has a really good episode. It's a really good episode, but it has a really good example of how they do some authentication statements and everything. So the other part that's on that form down at the bottom of section 9 is the authentication number. And what it is it's a 4-digit number that has no repeating digits, and it has no zeros in it. So basically it's 4 random numbers that you pick in a sequence that you can remember, and then I picked this one just as an example, 5164. Now you can ask questions about this number to your survivor, and you can say, Roger, can you give me the sum of your first and second number? And they would say, well, my number is 5164, so 5 plus 1 is 6. And they come back on 6. Or you can say, what is the sum of your fourth number divided by your second number? Well, 4 divided by 1 is 4. And so those are some examples of how you can use it. You can say, what is your second number, or what is your first number times your third number? Well, 5 times 6 is 30. You can do that. So it's pretty easy. So that is pretty much how you use the authentication statement and the authentication number. In summary, I just want to remind you guys, we talked a little bit about my background. I kind of covered that in the beginning, but we also talked about the history of CSAR. We talked about the different terms that you can call it. You can call it CSAR, you can call it combat rescue, you can call it personnel recovery, you can call it anything you want, but the elements are pretty much born out of what we saw in World War I and Vietnam, but it's also applicable to where you can use this in DCS world, in the different sim worlds. You can use it in Arma. You can even use this in DayZ if you had helicopters and trucks modded into the server. But you could pretty much, you know, do this in almost any type of combat military video game and everything. And then I gave you some examples from the ISAPREP of the authentication statement and the authentication number and how to use it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Be sure to share with a friend if you think they'll enjoy this. And also, if you haven't subscribed already, we found out that 57% of our viewers that watch our videos are not subscribers. And that means they're either logged out. But if you guys really want to help other people see this stuff and you're not a subscriber, all we're asking is that you consider subscribing, just so more people, it'll go into the YouTube algorithm and get that out to more people. It's, you know, based on popularity, and more people will see it. Always leave us a comment. Don't say anything classified, or we will have to come out and find you. That's all I have for Tyro, Takeda, and the rest of the AWG gang. Have a great day. We'll see you guys. Bye.